someone truly cool. A new global study says it's not about money or fame, but traits like curiosity, courage, and authenticity. And surprisingly, these traits hold true across cultures from South Africa to South Korea. We're joined by Todd Pezzuti, Associate Professor at University, or should I say University of Adolfo in Chile, and co-author of this cross-culture study on coolness. He unpacks why coolness matter not just in branding or pop culture, but in leadership, education, and how we can connect. Todd, thank you so much for making the time. Welcome to Channel Africa.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yes. What got you interested in studying coolness as a psychological and cross-cultural idea?
There's so many different opinions about what makes a person cool. You know, some people say it's about being confident or mastery. Other people talk about rebellion. Some people say that coolness has become a term that's so diluted it really has no meaning, that people use it just to say that they like someone or that they approve of someone or something. And we wanted to cut through the opinions and get real answers, because cool is important in society and it's important for people, and we should know what it means.
Yeah, and your research highlights 6 key traits of coolness. Can you briefly explain them and why they matter?
Okay, so these 6 traits emerged through our experiments and our data analysis. So I'll go through each one. One is power, which is having influence over others and control over your environment. The second one was extroversion, sort of being a dynamic social person. Another one was hedonism, you know, seeking pleasure and doing things that feel good. Another one was being adventurous, you know, seeking excitement. Another one was autonomy, being an independent person and doing your own thing. And the final one was being open to new ideas and new ways of doing things.
So in other words, you would say that coolness is a universal societal currency or social currency. And how is it different from popularity or being good generally?
Okay, so we have that. You know, we sort of addressed that in our study. So being good relates to doing the right thing and being a generally likable person. So there's a lot of overlap. What makes people good, you know, cool people tend to be higher on these good characteristics too. They tend to be likable, they tend to be moral, and people tend to have favorable opinions of them. But the 6 things that really differentiate the two are those attributes that I just mentioned. Now, that's not saying that good people can't have those attributes too, but those attributes are really good at differentiating cool people from uncool people.
And you surveyed people from South Korea, South Africa, Chile, and more. I would like you to tell me, what does the consistency in coolness traits say about human nature?
Well, we would say that coolness or cool people serve a function in all societies. That was sort of something we took away from the research, is that cool people are bold, they're independent, and they're magnetic. And people like that sort of benefit societies regardless of whether the society is in Asia, South America, Africa, or North America.
Yeah. And were there any surprising cultural differences or expectations when compiling this report?
Well, that's the shocking thing. There were very, very minor, or we could almost say no differences between the results in each of the countries. What was cool in China was cool in South Africa. What was cool in Korea was also cool in the US. So there was very little difference. You know, if I had to say just one difference, in Nigeria, being autonomous wasn't necessarily cool, which is kind of weird, because that's sort of being an independent person and doing your own thing is often considered fundamental to being a cool person. But in Nigeria, there really was no difference between cool people and uncool people on that trait.
Sorry, I'm laughing. Todd, I can imagine, because at times people try so hard to be cool, and you say coolness comes from a personality than wealth or fame. How can people develop traits like, autonomy and curiosity without really trying too much?
So developing those traits is hard. I mean, those traits are part of our personality and our core value system. And, psychologists would argue that we're born with our personalities. Of course, our environments can mold us to be more extroverted or less extroverted. But it's pretty hard for an introverted person to be extroverted. It's very tiring. And then when you think about openness, if you have a very conservative, maybe closed-minded person, it's hard to change that. You may want to do it to be more cool, but I would say it's pretty difficult. It's probably cooler just to accept your personality as it is and, be authentic.
Yeah, I mean, here in South Africa, we've got a cool president, but I'm keen to hear from you. How does coolness affect leadership and teamwork or education?
That's a good question. So cool people tend to be powerful, extroverted, they're bold and magnetic. So they probably are better leaders. They have more influence over other people, and people are drawn to cool people. Now, some of the attributes of cool people may not always be positive or may not be positive in all situations. Like being a hedonistic person may not benefit leaders in some situations.
But would you say it can boost credibility and influence?
Hedonism is a tricky characteristic among those six. I would say that's probably one of the only ones that wouldn't really boost legitimacy is, going out and seeking pleasure. A lot of leaders are very hedonistic. I can name some that come to mind for some scandals they've been involved in for involving hedonistic pleasures. But the other ones tend to be sort of more conducive to leadership than hedonistic, being open-minded, being extroverted, and those other ones.
Yeah, Todd, let me put you on the spot here. Your report speaks about authenticity, and I'd like you to tell me whether or not authenticity is at a risk. And I'm asking you because people are more on social media shaping identities. Are people less cool today because they're not really authentic? I mean, you look at some of the pictures, it's just filters. When you meet the person, the real person, they're not really identical to the person in the picture. So would you say that with social media's inception and AI, authenticity is at risk? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it kind of comes back to your question about how you can be more cool if you can cultivate those traits. And I answered your question thinking about person-to-person interactions, because it's really hard to change your personality if I'm here in a group or at a party. But on social media, it's super easy to be inauthentic, and anyone can create like a really cool appearance. They can create whatever appearance they want. So, authenticity is sort of, it's more difficult to regulate and maintain on social media. And people can create fake cool personalities on social media a lot easier than they could, in face-to-face interactions.
Yeah. So, Todd, would you say that trying to be cool can backfire at times? And what signs show someone that someone is faking this coolness? What is it that one should look out for? Because we do know that people can fake to be cool, and can it backfire?
Yeah, it can definitely backfire, I think. All those traits, you can try to be more extroverted, like an introverted person can try to be more extroverted, and it might not seem inauthentic. But if you're really pushing yourself to be more adventurous or open-minded, think about it more, you can push yourself to do those things. But I would say that people have an instinct for authenticity. I would say that it's probably an unconscious process in which we sort of evaluate a person's authenticity. When we meet someone, we're really good at sizing that person up, instantaneously. Research shows that we can size people up in milliseconds as to whether they're being authentic or real or not.
Yeah. As we conclude this conversation, Todd, how do you see coolness evolving in a fast-changing world and fragmented world, for a lack of a better term?
Well, when we talk about the evolving world, coolness is probably going to play an increasingly important role. As economies move from production to information and producing symbols and consuming symbols, cool is going to become increasingly important. How will cool change? That's a tough question to answer. Cool has changed through time, but in another way, cool has stayed steady also. When we look at cool people today, they're bold, independent, magnetic. Society has always had bold, independent, and magnetic people, but it's becoming more important today than it was maybe 100 or 1,000 years ago.
And finally, before I let you go, have you met anyone who redefined coolness for you, and what did you learn?
Can you repeat that question?
I'm saying, have you met anyone who redefined coolness for you, and what is it that you took out of that?
Well, that's a good question, because I would say this entire study helped me redefine what coolness is. I went into this study with a very different idea of what cool is. And I've been researching cool for a long time, for more than maybe about 10 years. And my idea has completely changed. I had this idea that the detached, unemotional person was cool, like the people you might see in movies. But I realized that that's not what most people consider cool. That sort of is the opposite of what we found in our research.
Yeah. All right, Todd, thank you so much for making the time, and thank you so much for talking to us.
Okay, thanks for having me.
All right, there you have it. That was Todd Pezzuti, the associate professor at the Universidad of Adolfo in Chile, talking to us about the issue of coolness. People fake to be cool. And of course, in the fast-changing world of AI, it's important that one know when someone is faking to be cool. And that conversation brings us exactly to 21:50 Central African Time.
Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.